but want to welcome you all aboard. And Richard, thank you for joining us today.
All right. Hey, thank you, Kerry. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone who's online right now. This is different for me. I'm so used to meeting people in person and getting out and really talking about the subject. So definitely let's try to make this as interactive as we can virtually. So again, if you have questions, please put those in the question box and let's make this interactive if we can. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of walk you through our journey of how we started, why we started. So let's get this going here. All right, so this is definitely going to be the chronicle for Hensel Phelps and our drone program itself. So we'll go through like a brief agenda. So, I always like to keep the audience kind of up to date, kind of what we're going to be talking about. There'll be an introduction, who we are, why did we start a drone program, right? And then talk about the journey. And then the key thing behind, our company, it has to be done safe. In order to launch our program, essentially, we had to prove that it was a safe tool to utilize in the sky. We'll talk about the journey. And some of you may know we were the first company to get the Part 107.39 waiver. And that was a huge win for us, right? Because we're a general contractor. We had other big companies out there that were just chomping at the bits, throwing a lot of money at this to get approved to fly over people using a parachute system. The beauty behind that is we do everything safe to begin with. So we were able to utilize that knowledge and apply it to our drone program. And we're going to kind of throw out some future stuff as well, and then we'll have Q&A. So let the journey begin. All right, 2011. This was the first drone that we purchased back in the day, right? We wanted to start. You remember this one, Kerry?
This was, I had one of those.
Oh my goodness. I remember going to Sharper Image and seeing this. Went back to the job site and told the superintendent, I go, hey, we could fly a drone at our job site. And he goes, get it, let's go get it. So I went and purchased the drone, right? This is before rules, regulations, and company policies. So we're in the middle of California, the middle of nowhere, Adelanto, desert, hotter than heck, windier than heck. And we thought we were, kind of going to push the envelope with this. We launched this thing and crashed it right away. So our drone program went downhill real quick. So,
but it's ironic that Adelanto actually translates to progress.
I know, right? Crazy. So this was the first drone, and from there I started really doing research on, hey, how can we utilize this tool? So then moving on, right? It took a few years. So now we're in 2013. California, for some reason, in the oh gosh, what is it? The movie industry, all the people out there were pushing the envelopes, flying drones. We had a drone pilot approach us, our company, and told us, well, we could get footage of all your buildings. So with that being said, marketing, right? What was for marketing? Marketing loved it. They said, okay, let's hire you. We're going to send you out and have you fly all of our projects. So when it came to flying Colorado, this gentleman flew out from California. I met him at one of our projects and saw the tool he was using. And at the time, I believe, Kerry, you probably are familiar with the Phantom 1, Phantom 2 GoPro, right?
Oh yeah.
You remember how kind of cumbersome and difficult those were kind of to set up and fly, but it was the cooler than cool thing to fly. So I'm sitting here watching him fly this drone, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is definitely a tool we could use here within our company. But here's the thing, being a general contractor, I knew right away watching this gentleman fly that there is no way we could actually fly the way he's flying, because we already had rules and policies in place with our safety program building buildings. And I knew right away a lot of things wouldn't work. Him flying over cars, people, we have some similar protocols already in place because of our cranes, the when we lift things. And I looked at this as no different than an object being lifted on a crane. So there's precautions we have to take. But at the same time, this was the start of us actually really starting our program. But even with that said, I remember going to I don't know what, one of the functions you put on, Kerry, where you were flying and talking about drones. And I remember I was looking at my Facebook page a couple days ago, and I saw that post go into your function.
Oh, one of our
And
new pilot experience programs.
exactly, yes, yes. I remember seeing the big van out there, everything logoed up, and the Inspire. This is when the Inspire first launched, and it's like, man, this is the drone I'm gonna get. We're gonna use this drone. So that kind of
When
started
we
the whole
flew it
thing.
into the lobby.
Yes, 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 yes.
God.
So I thought it was like a hoot. I was like, man, we're going to use this tool, and just working with Kerry and his team, we actually started pursuing it. But at the same time, internally, in order for us to fly a drone, we had to have an extensive program in place. So what we did, we're in 2014 here. We were looking for a company at the time to help us log kind of our drone flights, batteries, pilots. And at the time, there's several companies now, but at the time, this company here was just kind of leading the way back then. And the reason why we had to do that, because again, we're a general contractor and we log everything, right? There's a ton of paperwork for everything we do. And it's just because we need to make sure that everyone's protected when building a brand new building. So I looked at this tool as a tool that would actually help us take it to the next level. It was going to be the easiest thing for me to put in place so that we could present to our corporate attorneys to at least you know, pilot a pilot project to fly drones, right? So we started logging our information, formed a partnership with this company and started the process. And at the time, we needed a Section 333, so that everyone who's gone through that route understands how difficult that was and just time consuming with all the paperwork involved with that process. But once we established that, we moved forward, right? So now we're in 2015. This was a big high rise here in Colorado. This was one of our first projects where, we really started getting some really good data to really prove the value and the worth of using a drone on the job sites. So with this
So, and
project,
something like this, what benefit were you getting out of images like this?
yeah. So at the time, I'm going to be perfectly frank with you, we had no idea what we were going to get out of it. But what we learned from this image right now, it really helped us with site utilization, right? So this, if you're familiar with downtown Denver, Kerry, so this is 1144, right off of 15th Street, right there in the front. So this is the big high rise. When you look downtown, you see this building. So the value was as we were trying to figure out, analyze where we were going to put our concrete pump trucks, where we were going to put the fence. And if you notice on the screen, you could kind of see our Jersey barriers on the middle of the street, 15th Street there. So we were trying to really analyze how we were going to impact, that street during, big parades. That's when we were able to have parades, right? And we presented this to the city as well. It gave them that visual. And again, this is just a tool. We build buildings. That's what we do. And we're going to build the building with or without drone data. But this just augments it, takes it to a new level for us. So that's how we use it,
Interesting.
Gary.
So
Yeah.
there was a lot of area planning, asset management, traffic management. I mean, it sounds like this covered a very broad range of things.
Oh, it did. And then if you look at the slab of the floor there, you'll see like some red, like fibers, like strands. You see those in there? They're kind of going across the core there. What those are post-tension strands for the concrete. So we learned early on, when we first did this, like, holy cow, we could document this data and then bring it back into our BIM models, our CAD files, and use it as an underlayment to that process as well. So that this helped us start that journey to start documenting this process. We were at this time back in 2015 during this journey, we were trying to figure out how can we use this data? Because the key thing here was the drone pilots were pushing the envelope, right? And well, let me rephrase that. The drone pilots back then here in Colorado was me, right? I was the only one
Yeah.
back then. So I was trying to sell this to the company as much as possible, trying to get this information out to everyone who could use it. And trust me, it was a process because this was a new tool. And if you can imagine, a grown man out in the middle of the street flying a drone, you had a lot of people saying, why are we paying Richard to fly toys? What are we doing? You know what I mean? So that took a while there to kind of break that stigma. But yeah, it was, there was like comments like, oh, there's Drone Boy. You know what I mean? So things like that took a while in the construction industry. But if you
So
think
we do have a question about are there some specific software packages that you started off with for some of the different things that you've talked about already?
Yeah, no, there are. And again, I personally don't like to use names anymore. But with that being said, there are so many great companies out there. But the software that we used during our journey, at the very beginning, we started with Skyward. So that was the software to do all of our file management. Then from there, we teamed up with Skycatch to utilize their software as well. But again, during our journey, we've used Pix4Ds, we use Drone Deploy, Propeller. Those are softwares that we use every single day to, now. Um, but I mean, we try to standardize it in the construction industry. The more you can standardize, the better off you'd be. And I really try to do that early on. As I told our pilots as we started to get more pilots through this journey from 2015 to 2018, is we're going to use one piece of software, one piece of software only. But I learned real quick, we can't do that. It's like a toolbox, right? You have different tools for different applications. So then we opened it up to all of our great pilots within the company to let them explore and figure out what worked best for their team. So that answer the question, Kerry?
Yeah, I think so. And we have another question here: is for this view, where was the pilot standing?
I was standing, and let's see. Okay, you could actually see me in the left-hand side in front of the yellow barrier there. If you kind of zoom down in that area, that's me.
Orange vest?
Yep, that's me. Yeah. So here's the
Okay.
thing, right? I flew this on a Sunday, and then our drone program from the day we started it to today, right? We're always learning, and that's great. We're always learning. And this particular flight, it's so funny. When I flew this flight, there were actually some people sitting at a park bench. Um, it's out of the screen, but they were catty cornered to the upper right of us or left of us. And I'm flying this. I'm flying the site. I'm flying it, and as I'm flying, I'm kind of getting comfortable flying it in that area. And then I bring the drone down. And when I'm doing it, this is an Inspire. This was an Inspire 1 that I was flying. I was being a little flying cowboy, bringing it in for a landing because I thought the Inspire was an amazing platform, bringing in, lowering the landing gear, and just kind of bringing it in hot, right? And again, there was no one out there, no people out there, and I was landing within our fence. So I bring it down, and then the people came over next to me and they go, "Did you lose control of the drone? Did you bring it down that quick? You lost control?" Then I realized right away that we need a protocol for certain things flying in the cities, and this is what helped develop our different protocols. Again, it was lessons learned, right? You go out, fly, and realize like, oh, I need a protocol to go out to the building next door to me to let them know that we're flying. Also, I need a protocol to let the property manager of a high rise that has people in it let them know I'm flying, because what you're not seeing in here, there's a Four Seasons hotel. With that, we had to work out an arrangement with the property owner to let them know when we were going to fly, and they told us what the best day would be for us to fly where they had less occupants in the building, so that there wasn't, someone's coming back and saying, "Hey, why are you peeping in our window?" So there's a lot of coordination in this process. It's unbelievable. Like I tell people, we spend more time planning than flying, but that's a good thing, right? Especially flying in a downtown urban area. All right, so I'm going to move on. So then what we've learned, right, as we started to really fine tune our craft here. Oh, let's see here. Oh, here we go. All right, we realize we need to understand what it's going to take to really calculate, volumes. And again, we're not surveyors. By no means are we surveyors. But it really helps when we could talk to the rest of the team and let them know what type of quantities we have on our in our construction job sites. What do the stockpiles look like? Where are the utilities going? So we really started to really fine tune the craft. And during this time, during this journey, we really started to develop all of our pilots as well. And with the development of the pilots, they started really pushing the envelope with how we could use this tool on a job site. So now let's kind of move on. Then we started
So
really.
you're doing progress shots, you're doing analysis shots, you're doing cut fill analysis, stockpile measurements. So far, I mean, you've already talked on like 4 very distinct different roles.
Exactly, right? So we're learning real quick where the value is of utilizing this tool, right? So now as we travel, I mean, if we're kind of looking at a timeline, as we're going from 2015 to 2018, the team is really pushing the envelope and they're giving data to the job site where the job site is seeing there's value there. So it's no longer, hey, where's the drone boy at? It's like, hey, we need you to go fly because we need information about our job site. So this has become one of the best communication tools. And again, just one of them. We have several communication tools, but this is just a great communication tool to get back to our team plus the owner as well, right? So if the owner wants to know what's going on site, what utilities are being installed at a certain time, we have that information. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now that shot kind of reminded me of the promenade down in Castle Rock when that was under construction. The Castle Rock Fire Department, the only agency down there that had a drone, would go and fly it every morning and send images to the construction company, the first responders, the fire police, everybody, so that everyone knew, like, as of today, what are the best ingress and egress routes? What's going on? Where are people located? Where is everything situated on site? And it just gave them this huge advantage in situational awareness of what was going on that site every day.
Yeah, and that's the beauty. You hit the nail on the head, Kerry. In the construction industry, if you think about it, we are essentially a closed set. And that's the key thing right there, a closed set. So within the boundaries of our construction fence, I mean, we have a lot of latitude to document a lot of information. And I always, I'm always approached at a lot of these events I speak at by people that want to really break into the construction industry and start flying for construction job sites. The key thing for them, like I tell all of them, we are highly regulated when it comes to safety. Safety is our number one priority. And I'll tell you a story where we actually hired a third party, and trust me, I've hired some third parties, and I really wanted to work with them, but we had some bad experiences with a few of them where they weren't flying safe. They weren't adhering to our standards. And I understand the pilot is a pilot in command when they're on a job site. I do get that. But when they're not following our rigid policy as well and doing things that aren't safe within a construction job site. So in a good example right here, Carrie, if you look at this photo, when we were flying this, I have two tower cranes at this particular job site. So the pilot was talking about, they weren't cognizant, or they weren't, being mindful. When we have those cranes moving, those cranes take priority, because a standing crane not moving on a job site is costing everyone involved in the construction job site, from us to the owner. It's costing them a lot of money to have that crane not moving. And if I have a drone pilot who isn't willing to kind of pay attention to our rules when that crane is moving back and forth, that delays that crane from doing what it should be doing. But it's also a safety hazard, because if that drone gets in the way of that drone operator, and he or she gets fidgety and does something that they shouldn't do, we have people down below, right? So we're really careful with who we bring on board. But with that being said, what we've done is we've gone through an extensive kind of planning process. When I talked about planning, here's a good example of, we fly Orlando Airport. So think about that. We are literally on the airport with what's an active runways. And what we've done, and we put together, and this was some time ago, but we put together our kind of plan of attack. This is just one document. And what this does, this allows everyone who's involved in that mission to understand who's doing what, where they're going to be, how high we're going to be. And we give this information to the airport, right? So they could review it and they're comfortable with where we are. Again, in the construction industry, everything's about planning. Here's another an example of a document we use when we fly a project. It's a simple document, but it kind of helps us kind of identify which drone we're going to use for which project. So we go through this, fill this little questionnaire out, like, what are you looking for? So there we could pick, pick what drone we're going to use for the duration of that flight, for that project, I mean. Because if all they want is photographs and then they say, well, no, we want thermal imaging at the end of the project, we need to know that we need to budget in a very expensive unit, right? So with that being said, a lot of planning with all of our drone pilots. Actually, the drones, right? So here's a kind of a snapshot of the drones that we have. Where we're able to kind of keep track of all the flights, flight times, and this was taken some time back, but it's definitely kind of keeping track of inventory, keeping track of pilots. I mean, this is key for us because we've had situations where we've actually flown big projects and they will not let us fly unless we have a seasoned pilot on board to fly their job site. And they've actually requested this document from us so they can see which projects they flew, what drone they've flown. And it's crazy when the owner themselves is asking for this information. And we are definitely seeing that trend where the owners are now requesting this information.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy, right? And here's a whole nother thing, and this may look a little familiar as well. This is, oh, no, never mind. This is still Orlando. So this is kind of, if you look at the two blue dots, that's where we're flying. And then in between the two blue dots, the runway. This is the active
Huh.
Orlando Airport runway, right? So think about that. We have active planes and they allowed us to fly. And here's the reason why. Because we were able to demonstrate that we could do this safely. With that being said, when we fly this particular project, we actually have air traffic control representatives with us. And they are on the radio with air traffic control. We're on the radio with them. They're literally next to the pilot, and we're in constant communication. Our spotters are out on site, kind of watching things and just making sure we're doing everything okay. But think about how close that is to that runway. And the key thing is communication. For those, again, who are really looking to get into this kind of realm of flying these type of projects, demonstrate that you can do it safely, right? That's the key thing. And document as much as you can. And I'm telling you this is the way we do it. I'm sure there's a lot of other ways to do it, but we've been very successful by putting this information together and presenting it to, the air traffic control tower manager, the air traffic control tower, people involved. And here's one thing for those who have flown within controlled airspace, the air traffic control manager community is a tight knit community, believe it or not. So if you do something wrong in one airport, most likely, if you're flying other airports, they could possibly hear that you're not doing a good job. So keep that in mind. It's a small community. And again, what we do is we just kind of make sure we're doing what we can, making sure we're adhering to all the rules and regulations. And when we fly airports, what we always do is we put together, this is actually another airport here in Colorado. This is a Rocky Mountain regional airport. And again, our job site, if you look at the upper left-hand image, you can see the highlighted area. That's our job site. And we're extremely close to the runway again. When we fly a mission like this, we always put together zone maps. So you'll see the image in the middle where it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our spotters that are on site with our pilot, they all have the same kind of communication lingo. So, for instance, if my pilot is in zone 1 and my spotter is in zone 4, let's say, they see an aircraft coming in, they'll radio the pilot in command and say and tell them there's an aircraft approaching zone 1 from the west or from downwind. See, what we found easy for us, again, this is our way of doing it, is our pilots who fly this particular site, they understand which runway is which. And if an aircraft is coming in to a certain zone, they'll say aircraft approaching downwind, crosswind. So getting familiar with the air traffic control tower lingo is highly recommended. At least for us, it works well for us. The last
Wow.
image, go ahead.
So going back to that form that you showed, what I found interesting is something that you said is it helps you to decide what aircraft to use. And by that, meaning you have figured out that there is no one machine that does everything.
Correct. You are absolutely correct, Harry. And you know this, you you know this as well as me, because honestly, a lot of the drones that we have came from you, right? So when I
Thank
first
you for
started
that.
flying, yeah, when I first started flying, and this is just me, just kind of go big or go home. If you remember correctly, I called you up and said, I want the S1000. I want the biggest camera we could put on this thing. I want the biggest rig out on a job site. When I realized how big that aircraft really was on a job site, when we actually launched that and put it up at a job site, everyone, their jaw dropped, right? This thing was, and again, it's perspective, but it was a big drone. No one was expecting that. And kind of seeing that beast fly, oh my goodness, it literally creaked. People that have been in the industry and know that machine, it kind of creaks when it takes off.
It
We
shakes, it
realized, like,
rattles, it moans, it sounds
yes.
like it's ripping the air to shreds. Yeah. It's not a subtle or discreet machine.
Exactly. So we realized, like, oh my goodness, this machine is not going to be the machine that we're flying every single day. This is going to be a very special unit that goes up in the air. So yes, there are different drones for different applications. And don't let anyone tell you, if you're getting into this industry for the very first time, don't, I mean, there's a lot of people who have they're like, you're going to use this drone will do it all. Yes, it will. And trust me, I was the exact same way. I thought if someone approached my job site with a Mavic, I was going to kick them off right away. That was my thinking until I physically started flying it and realized how good that little unit is. Because all I need to do is take photographs of my job site and videos, I am going to take the smallest unit up in the air because it's less of a distraction versus taking a bigger unit up in the air. So and keep that in mind, right? You need to understand what you're doing downstream. So again, there's different drones for different applications, and trust me, we got them. We have all of the popular drones right now that are out there, right? And we use them all. They work for different applications. So I am not biased with what machine we're going to use because there's a good use case for it somehow.
I like hearing you say that because I think there is a lot of misconception or maybe just wishful thinking that you can buy one platform that does everything. And I mean, certainly if you start off with something like a, Matrice 300 with, the H20T, you have a huge breadth of functionality at your disposal. But is that always the right machine to fly? When, you're flying in a residential area and you want to be a little more discreet, you want something quieter, smaller, you don't always want to have a pickup truck or a van to carry your drone around. So there's a lot of
Yes,
different things to consider.
there really are. And if you remember correctly, I mean, I drive my personal vehicle is a Hummer, and I remember having to fold the seats down to load up, the drone equipment to go out and fly. And it was a chore and a challenge, and it was miserable. My wife would always tell me, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" And as soon as she saw like all 10 cases, and I'm not talking small Pelican cases, go big or go home. I had to have the big Pelican cases, right? With all the batteries, all the chargers, all the bells and whistles. It was miserable. And then try traveling with that stuff. It was not fun. So again, I'm loving the little Mavic, right? Throwing a little backpack or throwing my bag, it's the greatest little tool. I mean, we've come a long way in such a short amount of time. If you really, really think about it, with our journey when we started in 2011 to where we are now, the drone sizes, the capabilities have just kind of improved immensely. Battery life, and I hear, I belong to a lot of these forums where people are complaining like, oh, 30 minutes or 20 minutes. Oh, that's horrible. Yeah, try 10 minutes, 9 minutes back in the day trying to fly. And then praying that your batteries didn't start on fire if you stepped away. You know what I mean? So we've improved immensely. So it's kind of neat to kind of see the progression in a short amount of, again, it's short amount of time, but it's been a long time, right? It depends. It's all
Yep.
perspective. So here we have a drone zone map, we call this, right? So when we're flying a mission, we hand this out to everyone. We brief everyone, let them know that we're going to fly, where we're going to start, which direction the drone's going to fly when we're flying it. If we're using, one of the mappings or one of the autonomous flying softwares where we could serpentine back and forth and take photos. We set these zone maps up, emergency landing areas, kind of clear areas where our ground control points are. It's all about communication. And this is great when you give this to the owner as well, right? So they understand what you're doing on their job site. Ultimately, they own the job site, and we need to make sure we communicate properly. Again, the most important thing is safety, like anything. We have these risk assessment analysis that we always go through before we fly to figure out where the power lines are, the trees. Back east when I was flying out there as well, water towers, those things are out everywhere out there. Just keeping track of all that information. We go through this risk assessment, activity hazard analysis, right? Every job site has these. Our drone program has these, where we're actually going through assessing risk, figuring out what we need to do. And the beauty behind this is with this document, we put in, battery if it's too hot. When we fly like in Arizona, you got to take heat into consideration, right? If things are going to get hot, they're going to, probably turn off. So you need to have a contingency plan. All of that information is in this plan. Also, we brief our participants as well, right? We have a document on how to brief kind of people involved in the mission, participants. They go through this document. Kind of also, we have a permission acquisition form. So what we'll do is we'll walk the site, figure out who our neighbors are, and have them go through this, explain it to them, and get a signature. And trust me, people think this is silly, but I've had to pull this out several times, especially flying in certain areas where we've had local law enforcement, we've had people, other neighbors come up like, what are you doing? Why are you flying? Who are you snooping on? Was able to present this document, say, hey, this is what we're doing. We have permission from the property owner, and this is their contact information. At that point, we let that individual contact that person, right? We're out of the picture at that point because our mission is to fly the site and get off the site. So having this information is very valuable. Okay, so this is why with our drone program, why we went with the Para Zero.
Mm,
I don't know if you
I
guys
remember that.
remember that one?
Yep.
Okay, so with that really, when that video came out, I received a phone call from our insurance company, some of our senior people, and they told me, Richard, we're going to have to shut down the drone program. What do if you can't provide a reason why you could do it safe? At the time, this was, and Carrie, you know kind of the time frame of all this as well. There was several companies out there kind of really promoting their product, like, okay, we can, do safe operations using parachutes. And mind you, there is no perfect solution out there. Every company has issues, no matter what. This is a company that at the time, we managed to team up with. And the reason why we did this is because we were looking for a company that went through the testing, ASTM's testing, and got the approvals. And when we did this, this was the company that was, had the approvals to do it. So with that being said, this unit, all of you have probably seen this already. And again, please, there are several good companies out there. This is one of them, but there's other companies out there as well. Do your homework before you go and purchase a unit like this. Understand what your mission is. Because even like our internal process, we do not use this parachute on all of our missions, right? We were the first company again to get our approval for the Part 107.39 utilizing this particular unit and also team pairing it up with an approved drone. But with that being said, we don't use this all the time. We use it only when we feel that the situation actually calls for us to use it. Because if with any product, if it's not used properly, it's not going to function properly. So all I got to say is if you're going to do something like this, go with a unit like this, know your equipment before you physically fly a job site, right? So that's really important. So next, during our journey, once we got our approval to fly over people, we really started to figure out how can we use this? How can we take this to the next level? So this next slide I'm going to show you is kind of just showcasing kind of how you could take this to the next level. And for those of you that are in Colorado, you're probably familiar with this particular project. This is the West Lot project. And let's go back a slide, maybe. Okay. So with this, what we're able to do, maybe, let's see here. Oh, forget that one. We'll move on to this one. So what we're able to do with the drone data today is what we're doing is we're creating CG, right? Computer graphic animation, where we're able to take, our modeling skills and we're able to take it to the next level by flying a drone out on a job site. And then what we're doing is we're augmenting that, compositing drone footage with 3D animation footage. So this was an example of something we did where we were able to fly our drone using kind of the circular map, what I forget what it's called, but just
Orbit?
flying in, yep, orbit, yes, flying in an orbit around the site, and then doing tracking, motion tracking, and then creating a model, linking it all up, rendering it out. This has become kind of, and when we started the program, we said we're not going to use it for marketing, but this has become a valuable tool for us and being able to kind of do these types of composites. So this is something that, if you're getting into this industry, this is something that's very valuable within the, construction community right now.
Well, this pre-visualization for a customer, I mean, that has to be huge. I mean, showing the drawing of that platform is one thing, but really seeing it in scale on the site, that has just got to be game changing for your customers.
Oh, it really is. It blows their mind, right? Because we're able to do this. In the past, in order for us to do this, and trust me, I know this firsthand. Before, what we would do, we'd hire a helicopter to go out and take a red camera out there underneath the belly of the helicopter and go fly it several hours, right? Because either it was too light, too dark, it wasn't good timing, or it was just bad images. So they were out there for a long time grabbing footage, and we were spending thousands of dollars for a project to do this. And what we learned real quick from that very first video I showed you, realizing there was value in utilizing this tool and how we could save the company money, that's what we're looking at right here. We're
one
spending
of the first ones you did, wasn't that the Colorado Rockies building or something like that?
It was, yeah. That was a video I couldn't get to play.
Absolutely blew my mind when you showed me that.
Yeah, that turned out really well. And we did the exact same thing, right? That was flown with an Inspire 1, that video. This was flown with a Phantom 4, not an RT, just a Phantom 4 Pro. But think about that, right? With that tool, with that price point, where that tool comes in at the price point that it does, you're able to get this type of footage. Whereas before, we were spending, I'm thinking 14,000 for a flight to fly it several times a day to get different sunrises, sunset type of footage for us. So think about
there is an extra level of skill here with regards to tracking and getting everything to work right without jumping around as in the composite. But you guys have done a fantastic job.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and there's skill there. There's a skill set there, and I think you said you were going to offer a class for that, right?
I probably could. Yep.
There you go. There you go. All right, so moving on, right? So what we've done is we've figured out, we cracked this nut here. We're providing this as a service to our, our clients, to what we do. But all of that we had to document, right? We had, kind of getting into the weeds, right? We had to figure out how we were going to get into the weeds, and we had to document all this. So honestly, when we submitted our Part 107.39 waiver, all of you who have submitted waivers probably realize a lot of the times they send back an RFI, request for information, because you didn't answer something properly. When we submitted our waiver, our documentation for our Part 107.39 waiver, it took up the full 90 days. That I do remember because I was at a conference speaking. That evening, I received an email saying there was a request for information, and I'm going through it, and I'm like, wait a second. I actually had to send the email to someone else and, hey, can you read this for me or explain what you're reading here? The only thing that the FAA wanted at the time was our company name. They wanted to verify our company name because all the other information was correct, right? We demonstrated that we could perform a safe operation. So what you're looking at right now is kind of the order of operation of what these documents that we're looking at. This is kind of the glossary of our documents that we submitted to the FAA. So if you look at this, there's a lot of information here. So this is just one page, one topic, but then it went in depth. Each one of those topics went in depth on how we're doing risk management, operations, accident, incident reporting. So we submitted all of this information to the FAA so that we could get this approval. And again, it's a testament to how good we were putting this together because we answered all of the questions the first time. So I was really proud to do this. I'm very proud to get that waiver as quick as we did. All right. So with that being said, also it's really important to document kind of all your information with your pilot. So what we have at our job sites, the drones have these stickers on them. Our pilots have this sticker. And the thing is when we're on a job site, we could go up and scan these and understand what information the pilot has, or if there ever is a RAM check, we can hand them this card with that information. They could go pull up the data. So just being clear and documenting and just having ways of kind of communicating and getting information out to people. Think about that, in your kind of journey and creating your own logbooks and disseminating information. So the future, where are we going with all this, right? So right now, what we've done, we feel like we've cracked that nut where we have the information. We kind of have the low-hanging fruit, grabbing the orthomosaic videos and all that. But now we're really pushing the envelope with getting information out to the people that need it. The beauty behind some of the softwares that we use nowadays is we learned early on the hangup was the pilot, where they weren't getting the information out to the right people at the right time. So now with some of these tools out there, we're able to have the job site themselves go in there, start analyzing, cut, fill, understanding what their job site looks like. That's really important. Here we have other information where we're actually looking at a stockpile and we're trying to figure out what we have here is where we teamed up with another contractor where they're going in exporting earth. And we got to keep track of that, right, for billing and all that, because we got to pay the truck drivers. So this just helps us really understand how much volume is there day by day, utilizing these different tools that we have on the job site. And the key thing behind this is it's like anything. If you're going to deploy some type of new technology, you need to make sure that it's working properly. You need to test it, right? So what we do in a situation like this, we hire a professional surveyor, right? That's their profession. That's what they do. And we always do side-by-side comparisons to make sure that if we're going to give data out to someone, that it is validated by a professional surveyor so that we know that we are comparing apples to apples. So that's a key thing to do is know your equipment, really trust it, and understand it, understand the little nuances about it, because that's truly, truly important. Because if you don't know your equipment and you're giving bad data out to someone, that's going to hurt your reputation out there, especially if you're really trying to get into the industry and just kind of provide this as a service to a general contractor, to an owner. Just make sure you know your equipment. And Carrie, you know this as well as me. This is, within all the forums, it's like, oh, my drone is accurate up to, a centimeter or 2 centimeters. You got to take all that with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Some of those
Moving
claims
on.
are a little crazy.
Yeah, no, they really are. We tell our people, it's like, we're accurate, but, this is, best ballpark, numbers, right? I always hate to give out like numbers like that, because there's so many variables on how you do that, how you set it up, so many variables. All right, so moving on, the next thing, right, what's really important for us right now moving forward is actually, thermography. We're able to take a drone now on just, again, we hire professionals to button up the buildings, to make sure that the building is sealed up. But at the same time, our pilots, they are certified thermography, certified level 1. They went through the course, and they're able to go up there. And the reason why we do this is we want to make sure that we have everything in place before we turn things over to an owner, because the owner is going to hire a professional service, third-party service as well. It's what they do. It's how we have it set up in the contract. But if at any time we could actually set something up ahead of time and go analyze our buildings before we turn it over, it saves everyone a lot of headaches and a lot of time. Because if we do see an anomaly, we could get in there, fix it, figure out why it happened before we turn it over to an owner. So it's just another thing that we're doing here, moving forward. And then also another great example of combining different types of technologies, Google Earth, taking the point cloud, the point cloud data from our process images, and then just compositing them into other medias. This was a combination of Google Earth, InfoWorks, the point cloud data from a drone flight with the TIFF file overlaid, right? So there's different ways of actually really pushing this envelope with utilizing this data. Also, something to think about here with this technology, this is another what we're also getting into. Look at different waivers, right? So we have our daylight operation waiver. So this is another way how we use the drone to document our construction job sites, where we're able to kind of monitor this. What we're looking at here, the reason why this is all sped up and just kind of we added notes to it, but the reason why we were documenting this, we're using it as a training tool moving forward, so that when we do future concrete pours on this building, we understand where we're going to block off the roads, where we're going to, put our concrete pump trucks. But what we're doing is we're also document when you pour concrete, you're doing this at night. You start, depending on, 8 o'clock in the evening, and you roll all the way through, morning time. So here, utilizing our Part 107.39 waiver, and then also using our daylight waiver, we're able to document construction at night, monitor the site, monitor the crews. So this is just another tool that we use to, really advance kind of our crews, monitor what we're doing as a team. So it's pretty powerful. Next, kind of really, really future stuff here, and I know we have a few more minutes left in this presentation, but I want to talk about kind of future stuff, AI stuff. We're working with private companies to develop tools to allow us to take the drone technology and monitor AI, right? And when I say that, it's machine learning. It's more the machine learning before AI. We got to teach the machine what we're looking at. What we're looking at here is just kind of taking data, and we're able to process it, but we're really looking to push the envelope to understand how, people are interacting on a job site. Are they doing things safe? Are they wearing their PPE? Utilizing a drone, taking it up, we're going to really crack the nut with this technology moving forward. And if you look at the chronicle up top there, 2021, we're still in the infancy, but we're developing this in-house, and we're really looking forward to really pushing the envelope. And then also kind of really taking it to the next level, right? We're looking at the HP drone. Who knows? I mean, where this technology is going, we'd love to have our own specific construction drone. I mean, wouldn't any of you want your own drone? So our team, our team is kind of playing around here to figuring out how we could take it to the next level and develop the HP drone, right? It'll be in a store near you. Carrie will be carrying them once we develop them.
Well,
All right.
you understand your needs now. You understand the
Exactly.
different requirements and everything. So it'd be nice if you had fewer variety of machines to cover the wide variety of missions.
Exactly, right? I mean, the goal would be is if we could have a drone that allows, let's say for like our safety manager, safety directors, they could have a small enough unit where they go out on a job site, deploy it, monitor it, make sure things are safe. And it's never going to take away from them physically being out on a job site. But if we could have a unit that's just kind of an eye in the sky, just kind of monitoring, making sure everything's, up to speed, everything is safe, it's a great tool. There are so many different facets where we could utilize this technology. And again, like I've said, using drones is just the avenue for the data downstream. So where I'm going with that, it's about the sensor, right? The sensor is what's valuable, and how you use that data downstream is going to be a tremendous value to all the stakeholders. And again, we're barely at the infancy. If you think about it, when we started this presentation, I started back in 2011, right? It's been a while, but it's actually been a short amount of time if you really think about it in this
Hmm,
industry. So
sure.
it's gonna evolve, and we're pretty excited about it.
Okay, we do have a handful of questions here. I've been answering as best I can, but I left a few for you here. How many certified pilots do you have across the organization today?
Yep. So we have 8 districts, and we're averaging right around 35. We have some people move on and do other things in their career, but we're averaging 35 pilots with 8 districts.
Nice. See, Ron was asking about value adds to sell to construction companies. I think you've kind of covered a pretty broad spectrum of all those things, from photogrammetry to stockpiles to cut fill to progress shots to, just there's just a wealth of different things that are being used in the construction industry. See, John's asking, what is the majority of your work, stills or video?
It depends. We do a combination of both, to be honest with you. It's mostly photographs, but we have a good amount of video. So it's about a 50-50 when we go out on site.
Okay. See, Wilson's asking, do you use a visual observer as standard practice?
We do. Yep, they're out there. Some sites that they're extremely small will just be the pilot in command, but it's all about the site. Depending our airports, we definitely have visual observers. Some of our in the middle of nowhere sites, it'll just be the pilot as long as they have visual line of sight. It depends on the site. But for the most part, we'll have a team go out there and kind of monitor the flight.
Now, in your case, are all your VOs also 107 pilots, or do you have people who haven't moved up to the rank of pilot yet?
No, they're usually probably field engineers or people on site that understand the site. So that's usually who our VOs are. Our bigger projects where our airports will have a couple of Part 107 pilots there with, at the same time, different playing as a VO pilot. So it depends on the site, but it's most of our sites, it's usually our pilot and the field engineers.
Okay. Michael asks, are you using drone data for as-built verification on any projects?
We are, especially our large utility projects. What we'll do is we'll fly before, right when we dig our trenches, fly it when the conduits, fiber is in the ground, and then fly it again afterwards so that we can stack everything and get that overlay for future use.
Okay. What drones are currently in your fleet?
Well, let's put it this way. We have all of the DJI drones, and it varies on which one we're using. But to be honest with you, the ones we use, kind of our workhorses have always been the Phantom 4 Pros. Those work well, but we're also deploying the Mavics because a lot of the times we don't need like super accurate data if we're going to process it in some of these softwares. And all we're looking for is videos and photos. I mean, those are great units, right? They take great photos. They're small. We could deploy them really quick. So it varies. I mean, we have all of them, and then we have the big ones, and we have some of the big ones. So it just depends on the mission.
Okay. This is another great question from Michael. What would make your use cases more efficient, specifically regarding drone automation and/or navigation capabilities?
I
That was a
guess.
great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one. I'd have to think about that one, to be honest with you.
When I read that, I was thinking, well, there isn't good data available for knowing where existing obstacles are, whether that be like antenna, radio antennas or guy wires, power lines. That you have to go out on site and figure that out when you're scoping the site out. There's terrain data today, and that terrain data is getting better and better, but there's no obstacle data out there today.
So the best thing I have actually seen a video where they're using different lidars, and it's almost like a little race drone, and they're racing it through a forest, right? So a tool like that, I could almost envision something like that being like a rover. Before you get on site, you deploy the rover to analyze the site with all these lidar sensors to figure out where those obstacles are. That then pushes it into a software that goes into your flight planning and avoid, that would be like the future, right? That would be amazing. There's sensors out there. I've seen them, but we just haven't seen them on a job site yet.
So something that can scan the job site, record all the obstacles, and make that part of for lack of a better word, a geofence to keep you from hitting anything that's there.
Correct. That would be amazing. And, it's almost plausible because the technology is definitely out there. It's out there, and with, you do it 5G to kind of upload quick, it's all these buzzwords, right? But it's, I definitely could see that being developed. So Michael, if you want to develop it, let's talk.
Now, I remember at the beginning, everything was they were 333s. So all your pilots had to be Part 61 pilots, but are your 107 pilots today still Part 61 pilots?
No, the majority of them are just Part 107 pilots. We have a couple. Actually, now I think about it, we only have one because that individual is no longer flying. So we have 161 pilot.
Okay. Do you have scheduled maintenance programs or plans for maintenance?
We do, and that's all with the Skyware tool we use that allows us to kind of analyze which drone has been in operation for a long time. So we kind of just compare the two and do our maintenance on them.
Okay.
Key thing is landing pad. That's another key thing is that helps the drones last a whole lot longer. If I remember correctly, I think I've sent a few drones back to you to replace motors. This has been some time, but on the Inspires, we had issues with those early on, but we learned landing pads was our best friend.
Oh, landing pads are great, keeping all that dust out of the motors.
Yep.
As part of the maintenance plan, do you have like scheduled replacement of motors and props after a certain number of flight hours?
Yeah, so definitely the props, motors. I mean, to be honest with you, for the longest time, what we would do at that point was just we would retire those drones, turn them into training drones, and just purchase them. But now we're rethinking all that. There's so many different factors right now where we're rethinking that. So our policy will change on that because just being able to purchase the drones and having things in stock, and so right now we're actually reanalyzing that. But props, we definitely have a replacement policy on those, and batteries a replacement. But the drone itself, we're working on that one. We're revamping that piece.
Yeah, I think when you have a solid report of what's going on, your battery usage and all that, that's helping you plan out. And the tools that you're using, you'll see over time how voltage is changing and you're getting less flight time out of them. That helps you plan your battery replacement. In my perspective, and what we've done is part of your pre-flight is a good check of those motors, spinning them back and forth. And the first sign of abnormalities, I guess, would be,
Mm-hmm.
is it gritty? Is it loose? Does it not feel the same? And then replace all of them.
Yep. And it may sound silly, but after flying as long as the person flies, also listening to it when it's in the
Yeah.
air, if it's making a different noise, there may be something there. It may sound silly, but that's just another cue to just kind of be aware of. If you don't have a maintenance plan, just do your visual, listen to it, because it will, if there's something wrong with it, or if there's a debris in there, it will definitely hum a little bit different. Again, this just comes from experience as well, just flying them as long as
You definitely get to know your equipment. This is a great one from Barry. Hey, Barry, thanks for joining us. He says, I assume you test with a surveyor and then stop using the surveyor once it's all set. After that, do you find legal issues with not being a surveyor yourself? There's been cases of people being taken to court for not being licensed surveyors.
Yep. So yeah, definitely. That's a great question. And that's how come I always emphasize to all of our pilots, we are not licensed surveyors. So we are not giving any type of survey data at all. What we do, we always have that licensed surveyor on that project. They are contracted to monitor and get that information for us. What we're doing, we're just verifying data. We're able to get those units up there pretty quick and just verify, export of dirt. That's mostly what we were really working towards, is figuring out what that export is. But when it comes to analyzing a job site, we call on the professionals, because that is, you have people out there, and it just bugs me when I hear people say, oh, we're out there mapping. Like, oh, wait a second, you're mapping? Are you a licensed surveyor? And like, well, no, but the technology is doing it for us. It's like, man, you need to understand
Fine
what
line.
your rules, yes, you need to understand what your rules and regulations are within your city, because you don't want to do that. We are in the business to build buildings, and that's what we do great. We're licensed to do that. When it comes to all of our other trade partners, they're licensed to do that, right? So, yeah, no, that's a great question, and we've definitely seen that out there, Barry. But yeah, we always rely on our surveyors to give us the right data.
I always say that I can collect data and hand it over to a surveyor,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
but I'm not analyzing it. I'm not creating survey grade data. I'm just collecting data, and it's up to a surveyor to put his stamp on it, not me.
Yep. That is
Uh,
so correct.
oh, that's a good question. Do your pilots come internally, or do you solicit job openings?
Yep. No, those are all internal pilots. Some districts have in their contracts, they'll actually hire a third party. So it just depends on the project, the district. But for the most part, it's the pilots that we have on staff now are all internal pilots. And keep in mind, that's not their full-time job. They have other duties, and this is just one of their assignments that they're tasked with. And some of them that just love doing it. It's what they want to do. Others are doing it because it's their project, and they'll do it. They're good at it, but then they move on. So that's like with our pilots, we probably have a whole lot more, but we're averaging right around 35, because some of our pilots, they want to do other things with their careers.
Excellent. How would you recommend a pilot approach companies to be a subcontractor? Like,
That is a great question. And I always recommend, if they're going to do that, is document. Go in there prepared with documentation and have a safety plan in place, because a lot of respectable general contractors, when approaching their job site, their number one goal should be safety And if you approach them with safety in mind, and then from there go into the marketing piece of it, how they could use it, that's what I recommend. Because think about it, when we have any trade partner on a job site, if something goes wrong, people always remember the general contractor because our logos are all over the place. And it's a lot of people won't hear about that third party trade partner. They won't hear about them hardly, but they're always going to remember, it's the general contractor who messed up. So go in there with a solid safety plan, explain to them how you're going to conduct a safe operation, and then from there show them the value. It's all about value, right? Because they need to make sure that they could, one, they're going to get something out of it by getting good data for their site utilization plans, video footage for the owners. So that's what I would do. I'd go in there with a solid plan.
Would you say it's really important to understand the deliverables? And I think this goes for pretty much any industry out there. What is it that you're going to be looking for? If I'm coming to you, I should have some knowledge of what type of data you're looking for.
Yep. Yeah, I would definitely say if you could go in there and present your kind of orthomosaics, just showing kind of like what you've done in the past, and if you're capable of then taking it even to a third-party software, how you could integrate it into a third-party software, that's powerful. If you're able to create the visuals, that's powerful. Um, you got to be really careful going in there saying that you're going to give them cut, fill, contour lines, because again, you're crossing that fine line. I wouldn't present any of that. I mean, I don't know. That's just me. So it's a fine balance. You need to know your audience. That's the key thing. Know who you're approaching, and then go from there. But if you could provide value, it's an easy sell at that point, and safety.
Okay, we had a couple of questions regarding the video that you showed with the 3D models being put into the video and what software you were using for that. And if I remember right, you were using After Effects, weren't you?
Yep. So it was a combination, right? So what we used is we used After Effects, we used Premiere, but the kind of the workhorse behind it, modeled it in Revit, modeled it Autodesk Revit, modeled it, and then did all of our compositing, the majority of it in 3D Studio Max with the texturing and all that. Once we were able to do that, then we fine-tuned it with a lot of the rotoscoping in After Effects. So
Okay.
with that video, that particular video, I remember that one dearly because we only had less than 2 weeks to put that together. And when I say 2 weeks, I'm not talking just 9 to 5 type of thing. It was 2 weeks. It took, yeah, there was me and another gentleman, and it took all 2 weeks pretty much. So I won't do that again. I've learned from that one, but we've learned to kind of speed up our process, and we learned a lot from those. But yeah, those are the softwares. 3D Studio Max is your friend when it comes to that stuff, and the Adobe products seem to help. For us, that's worked for us. But I've seen people do it in Blender. Blender's free. I mean, so it's
Yeah.
like, holy cow! I'm pretty impressed with Blender.
Blender is awesome, and there's so many online tutorials for it. Just a
Yes.
wealth of information. Let's see. James is asking, do you use any form of drone cars for any type of data collection or inspection?
Drone cars.
I imagine ground drones.
Yep. 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 So the answer to your question would be no, but there is value there. I mean, early on, I was looking at creating a rig that would allow us to kind of put an Osmo on it or some type of camera and just run it through our trenches. Time slipped away and never got to that project, but there's definitely value in using that because again, it's about the sensor. If you could take any type of sensor and figure a way to capture the data, what I'm learning at now and where I am right now in my career in this technology, it's about the data downstream. So if you could take a sensor and figure out how to extract that and really provide that value, that's pretty powerful.
Okay. See, Ron, what software do you use to communicate drone data to customers coming out of post-production?
Okay, so that would be kind of like the drone deploy, Pix4D, I'm thinking, right? Kind of the web base. Is that what you're thinking, Carrie? There is
Yeah,
that kind of
that's what I'd be thinking as well.
Yep.
It
So
depends on the specific deliverable.
it really does, yeah. So if it's like we give access to an owner, it's going to be whatever software we're using. If it's the Skycatch, if it's a drone deploy, if it's Pix4D, if it's Propeller. I mean, it could vary. It depends on what the team is using at the time. But we try to send it off in a platform like that. But then we have projects where we can't post anything online at all. It can't be. It's just because of the type of contracts. So those
Yeah.
are usually processed in-house with, Pix4D, and then from there just kind of given to them, the old-fashioned way, throw it on a jump drive and go in a meeting and say, here you go. So it just depends on the client.
Okay, let's see. Robert says, is there a niche for a small drone business in large construction firms? For you guys, money doesn't seem to be an issue. Do you have words of wisdom for a startup company?
Yep. So great question, and definitely money is an issue. It really is.
I know it is because I've been working with you for years. So.
Yes, money is an issue. The biggest thing I would say for a smaller company, if you really want to kind of understand what your end game is, that's key. From there, take whatever you're using, the drone, and just make sure that you're capable of capturing the best data from that as possible. And you build a portfolio. That's the key thing. I think that's how that question's coming across. Is that kind of someone trying to enter into the construction company, or is it a construction company that wants to do what
I
we're
believe
doing?
he's a small drone business
Uh,
looking to get into working with
yep,
large construction firms.
yep. I would do is have a great reputation. I mean, here, to be honest with you, a good attitude, right? Good attitude. Know your equipment. Prove that you could do it safe, and have a decent portfolio that you could show that construction company and show them that you could provide value to them. And once you do that, once you build that relationship with that company, trust me, it goes a long way. Because if you're doing a good job with that certain project, certain individual, they all talk internally. When it comes to that next project, they're going to say, hey, who did your footage for you? And they're going to say, so and so did it. That's how it happens. It really does. Just make sure you provide them with a good product. In your portfolio, have the best of the best that you could present to someone and show them what you could do. And just prove to them you could do it safe. That's a key thing within, again, I'm going to go back to safety. If you could prove that you could conduct a safe operation and you have waivers in place, if it's near an airport, could provide some type of thermal flight nights. If you have those relationships and you have the proper documentation, it could go a long way.
Excellent. See, Alexander's asking, what areas do you cover in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York? But I mean, you guys are in not just all 50 states, but you're international, aren't you?
We are, but it's kind of funny. Those states actually came up because we don't, in those states that you actually described, we don't do any work in those states.
Really?
Not for construction, no. Our services department and development work in that area, but our construction wing does not work in those areas and there's reasons, but yeah, we don't work in those areas, but yeah, that's the answer to that question.
Okay. I think the last one here from Barry. He says his son has been running missions for Hanger for just about a year and just finished college. How could he apply to join your company? Is there a job board or something?
Yep, there is definitely. If you go to henselphelps.com, and in there's I believe it's the upper right hand corner. There's an area there to kind of look at what openings we have through all of our districts. We have, like I said, we have 8 districts, and we hire for a variety of different jobs. But yeah, just have them go to our website, and then in there's a drop down to actually apply for whatever position they're looking for. My department here in Colorado, I run the virtual design and construction department, so it's known as VDC. So that's what I head up here in my district here. We have 2 other VDC managers as well, and then we have a bunch of VDC engineers working in our department. But all of our districts have a VDC manager within those districts. Or if you want to get on the construction side, we have field engineers as well.
Fantastic. I think this was an awesome presentation with some really super good information for everybody. Really appreciate you, Richard. I know we've talked on and off about doing something in the past, so I'm so glad we're finally able to put it all together and put together this webinar for everybody.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited about the future opportunities.
So everybody, I will be sending out a recording. So it takes a while to process the video and everything, but just watch your emails that you will get a link to the recording of this. Usually I try and get it out like this evening. If not, it'll be first thing in the morning, no later than that. So that's be looking for your emails to get that recording for you, because I think there was so much in here. You might want to watch this a little bit at a time and be able to digest it. So thank you everyone for joining. And again, Richard, thank you for participating.
Well, thank you very much. Bye for now.